Hello again, everyone. Former WWE referee Jimmy Corderas here. And this Sunday, one of my personal favorite events that the WWE holds is Survivor Series. It holds a special place in my heart. But today is even more special because not only do I get to chat with an old friend, I also get to chat with our WWE Champion once again, Drew McIntyre. Drew, welcome to Aftermath.
No, thank you, Jimmy. Good to see you. Wait a minute, what am I doing?
Yeah.
I gotta get down here and get this title. There we go. What am I doing?
There it is.
Right away.
Hey, you got it. You got to show it off. The 10 pounds. It used to be 10 pounds. I don't know if it's more now, but
It's definitely more than 10 pounds now.
Okay,
I felt naked for a few weeks when I didn't have it.
Yeah, I can imagine. I was going to ask you how you are, but with the Rangers on top of the Scottish Premiership, Scotland qualifying for the Euro, and like you said, you're once again WWE Champion. It must be pretty good to be Drew McIntyre right about now.
It's very cool to be Drew McIntyre right now. You know, you mentioned all the cool things going on with Scotland. We've only got 5 million people. We don't do too much. We're not achieving too much these days, aside in wrestling. But qualifying for the Euros, the Scottish national soccer team. My goodness, Scotland became second in World's Strongest Man. Also, I don't want to forget that. And, myself regaining the WWE Championship against Randy Orton after a 4-month feud, which is such a rarity these days. But the one thing I've not been able to do is beat Randy in the middle with the Claymore. And it happened this Monday. It happened on Raw. First time the titles changed hands on Raw in 5 years. It was a really cool moment. Plus, I wore a kilt and brought out a giant sword and set off a bunch of fire, which was also awesome.
You know what? The entrance was amazing. And I got to ask you about this title victory over Randy Orton. I know winning the title for the first time is sweet. Is the second time just as sweet?
Yeah, it is. I was asked right after the match, how do you feel like compared to the first time? And I said, I guess I feel exactly the same, because I do feel exactly the same. The second time is just as sweet as the first time. I guess the only difference, obviously the first one, the empty arena with Brock at the height of the pandemic, was different, but just as special. It was an escape for the world. Every other sport was shut down. We gave them WrestleMania with 14 million social media interactions, up 60% from the year prior, brought a lot of smiles to faces, meant the world to me winning the title in that environment. A little more selfishly this time, I was in the Thunderdome. I had the big special entrance. My wife was on the screen in the Thunderdome watching the match, which was pretty cool. And obviously pinning Randy in the middle was really cool as well. And we have a lot of superstars who are very fortunate to win the WWE Championship once. And that's awesome. You'll always go down in history winning it once, but to kind of cement yourself in that top level and win it a second time, really means a lot to me too.
Yeah, it was an incredible moment. And like you said, I hate to sound very cliche here, but it's during this time of uncertainty, this is what you guys do at WWE. You put smiles on people's faces. You let us forget. You let us escape for a little while, which is very cool.
Yeah, I mean, that's the motto for the company. And the more involved with that project, the more I understand why that's the motto, and the more like charity work especially I get to do, and see those big smiles on like kids during hospital visits, for example. It doesn't bring a smile to their face, brings a smile to my face. And I understand now that's why the company's motto.
Right. That's amazing. And but let's get down to the crux of the situation here. We're talking about Survivor Series, but last week on SmackDown, you crashed SmackDown and you confronted Roman Reigns.
I did.
And a little bit before the match was set, but now it's set for this Sunday. Champion versus champion, WWE Champion versus Universal Champion. What are you looking forward to most about facing this iteration of Roman Reigns?
It's hard to figure out what I'm looking forward to most. I'm just looking forward to the match itself. Where Roman is at right now is very interesting. He's been the top superstar for years and years and years. Main evented 4 WrestleManias in a row, I believe. Everything he says right now is the truth. That's what's so compelling about his character. He talks about the analytics, he talks about the numbers. It's all true. The difference is that was always the case. When I first returned to WWE and I saw how far Roman had come and become the man, not just in the ring, but out the ring, and it is a 24/7 thing. All these levels exist. When you're at the top level, you're nonstop to be the top guy, and a lot of people can't handle the pressure. He handled the pressure, he excelled in the pressure. That's why he was the guy. And I'd observed him when I first returned to WWE and said, I'm going to be like Roman. So I've been wrestling longer, but I want to step up to his level. That's such a great example. But then to watch what's happened since then, he obviously, took his break. And I don't know what happened, if Paul Heyman got in his ear or the reaction of the fans and the superstars, but he came back and suddenly it wasn't the same humble workhorse. It was the guy bragging about all the analytics and the numbers, which are all perfectly true, but that's not the guy I aspired to be like. I put my head down, worked myself, to the bone, and finally pulled off my goals. I've evolved to where Drew McIntyre is at today. And I think, Roman's going to get a very rude awakening when I humble him this Sunday at Survivor Series.
It's definitely going to be an interesting confrontation, to say the least. And here's the hard part about it, that I'm looking at it from a different perspective, because yes, you have to focus on this match with Roman Reigns this Sunday, but there's still a lot going around the WWE Championship picture right now. I mean, although you defeated Randy Orton this past Monday, he's still in the picture. Miz is hovering around with that Money in the Bank briefcase, and even The Fiend is getting somewhat involved. Is it difficult to concentrate strictly on Roman going into Sunday with all that's happening around on the Raw situation?
There is a lot going on, but my eyes are, fully focused on Roman. And even though I showed up on SmackDown to kind of warn him it's going to be me, I talked about him on Monday. I was fully focused on Randy that Monday Night Raw, because you're an idiot if you look past Randy Orton. But right now, my 80% of my attention is on Roman Reigns right now. This is the biggest match possible in WWE right now, possibly the biggest match of my career, to prove myself. A battle of two chosen ones who took two very different journeys. It's, a very interesting dynamic going on this Sunday. But at the same time, who knows what Randy's going to do? He could try and show up and crash the party. He could attack me in my hotel. He could attack me in the parking lot. Who knows? You've got The Miz, who everyone keeps forgetting about, including me, which I'd be silly to forget about. He has that Money in the Bank briefcase. As much as I beat him up, he keeps coming back, him and Morrison, and he's got the Money in the Bank briefcase. He can pick his moment every time. If he does, we've got 52 weeks a year. I will make his life hell. If he tries to cash in on me, even if he doesn't is successful, I will batter him every single week for the rest of the time. And then when it comes to The Fiend, I personally believe his attention is not so much on championships as it is on Randy Orton. As where I cared more about the title than Randy, he cared more about Randy than the title. I think that guy, it's hard to predict that guy.
Yeah, he's kind of out there in left field a little bit. So you're trying to predict him is hard. And as far as The Miz, you mentioned 52 weeks a year. Miz can be annoying 24/7 as well. So yeah, I know you know
that's
that.
Quite a talent to have. I'm pretty sure I've told him this before. It's quite a talent to have the equity and the TV time and the work ethic he has, and he's still seen as such an unlikable heel. That's a talent. Usually the crowd start cheering the guys with that kind of tenure, but they keep booing you. That's a talent.
That is, especially in today's day and age. And getting back to your match with Roman, it's champion versus champion, but neither title obviously is on the line. What does it mean to you to beat someone like a Roman Reigns? Is it strictly bragging rights? Is it that important? Because you and I both know that there is that rivalry between Raw and SmackDown in the back where maybe it's not spoken about as often as, but I don't think people are aware that us versus them, even though you're kind of under the same umbrella, exists.
Oh yeah, bragging rights is certainly part of it, but then there's more to it. I think in this particular instance, with myself and Roman, like we're highly competitive. War is in both our blood, our ancestry. We're two modern day warriors. No matter what I think about him or he thinks about me or he thinks about himself, which is all he thinks about these days, in the end, we're both warriors. We're going to war this Sunday and we're going to give everyone a match. We're not going to forget that I'm looking to prove I belong at the same level as a Roman Reigns, even though he's got those years and years of equity and I'm still on my way up. When you talk about that rivalry, it's 100% true. We've got the Undertaker's 30th celebration the same night as Drew McIntyre versus Roman Reigns at Survivor Series. This is such a huge, huge pay-per-view. And I remember when I first came in, sitting under the learning tree, observing Taker on SmackDown and how dedicated and how committed he was for SmackDown beating Raw and the work he would put in. And I'd see him in constant pain, backstage. And I can talk about this because obviously talked about it on the Last Ride documentary. He's a private person, but now that's out there. I was amazed as a kid and such an example he set. He was just so committed, loved his job so much, loved SmackDown brand so much what we're on at the time, you and I both, that he would give it absolutely everything and fire us up to, defeat Raw. Now I'm on Raw. It's the other way around, of course.
Yeah, you brought up the Undertaker, and obviously a career celebration happening this Sunday. And since you brought it up, I'm going to ask you, from my standpoint as a referee, standing in the ring with someone like the Undertaker is indescribable. It's so difficult to put into words, but I can only imagine what it's like for someone like yourself as a competitor who's standing across the ring from him, looking at him eye to eye. Take us through a little bit of what that's like to face the Undertaker in the ring.
Crazy. It's hard to put into words. Craziest thing about my first match with him was, generally the Undertaker will come out second and have the spectacular entrance. You see the reaction of the opponent in the ring. Our first match, it was the night, week before WrestleMania, where he defeated Shawn Michaels. I want to say 27. Sounds right. Fact check me on Google. Nonetheless, he was out first, which was very rare. We switched the entrances, and I came out second. And I believe that was by design at the time. And it was all equally as terrifying to walk to the ring with him in there as it is when you're in the ring and watching the entrance, because he's pacing around like a madman. And you got it, like at the time doing the Chosen One thing, I have to keep a very straight face, very robotic, and I could just see the Undertaker pacing around, looking like he wants to murder me. And being a kid at the time, I'm like, oh my God, the Undertaker's gonna kill me. So we had our match there. It looked like a boy versus a man when we went face to face. But the cool thing was, years later, when I had the opportunity to face him again, myself and Shane McMahon versus Roman Reigns and the Undertaker, when we had that same face-off, the evolution was clear that now it was a man that belonged in the ring with the Undertaker, and the crowd felt it because I could feel them rumbling. It was so cool to have that moment years later with him. I'd be lying if I said I'd be disappointed if this is the last hurrah. He deserves it. Whenever he decides to ride off into the sunset, he's earned it. But if I can get that match that's been talked about since I was about 23 years old with the Undertaker in any environment he wants, I would be a very happy man.
That would be incredible. And I was going to ask you your favorite memory of the Undertaker. What did you just describe it, or is there one that stands out above all else?
Yeah, I mean, that second match in particular just meant so much to me. And Vince McMahon actually put him in charge of me. He was my mentor when I first returned to SmackDown, the Chosen One role, and like I would harass him all the time and get advice from him. So I was around him all the time, bothering him all the time. So I had some special moments there, just as a kid, just constantly going, Mr. Taker, I need some advice. Which is really cool to look back on. But being in that match and seeing how far I'd come and speaking to him on the same level, like with, you know, a much higher wrestling IQ than I had when I was a kid, and speaking about wrestling philosophies, a very similar philosophies, and speaking as men was really cool backstage. But also the match itself, it was right after the match with Goldberg that didn't go very well, and you know, all of us in the match wanted to give him a match he deserved. But me personally, I wanted to show him, like, just as the guy who was the kid and he was supposed to be the mentor, I wanted to show him how far I've come. And you can only really tell how far someone's evolved, how good someone is by being in the ring with them. So I was like really excited to get in the ring with them and have those couple of interactions, those couple of moments, have a conversation afterwards with them was very, very cool and very personal. It meant word to me.
That's amazing. And like you said, sitting under the learning tree of the Undertaker is just incredible. And you know, throughout history in this industry, learning from veterans is kind of like a tradition. Other than the Undertaker, who are some of the other vets that you learned from? And if I could ask you, what was the best piece of advice you received from someone? You can name them or not, whatever it is. I
mean, that's so much. It's crazy the difference now. That's the biggest thing I noticed when I came back, as all these veterans were pretty much gone, or at least the very end of their career. There's so few guys left now that have that kind of experience that existed during my first run. I mean, you were obviously there. So I was very fortunate to get in the ring with guys like The Undertaker, like Fit Finlay when he was still active, like William Regal, like just so many superstars, Edge, Christian, Rey Mysterio. Like Edge is still there in some capacity, Rey's still full-time. Kane when he was still full-time, Big Show. Like if you just look at that roster at the time, I was very fortunate to be around a lot of people to be learning from and getting great advice, like, you know, don't forget, be nice to everyone on the way up as the same people on the way down, which has always been a big thing for me, being like a nice guy, because, you know, you never know what's going to happen, and positivity brings positivity, negativity can only bring negativity. And for The Undertaker, I think I told this on my Instagram story I did. If anyone wants to check it out, my Instagram, I do some Undertaker impressions. Hopefully he's okay with. And I remember him saying to me as I went up as a little kid, like, any advice for me, Mr. Undertaker? Stop playing the wrestler and be the wrestler. And I would like, yes, sir. And I'd walk away like, I have no idea what he's talking about. What does that mean? My brain could not compute it, because at the time, like, I just wasn't able to think at that kind of level. And I was like, I'm out there, I'm in my wrestling gear, I'm doing the moves. What is he talking about? Until like maybe not years later, but a couple of years later, the light bulb goes off, and I understand that, oh, I was so tense, and it's so obvious I'm trying too hard. It's not natural. You look at my eyes, you can see I'm thinking about the next move and the next place to go. I'm not in the moment. If I'm not in the moment, I'm not feeling it. The crowd are not in the moment. They're not feeling it. Basically saying, freaking relax. But it took me years for that to compute, but it's such great advice.
Yeah. Sometimes it takes a while. Sometimes you think you know when you've been in the industry for a few years, but sometimes it takes you a little while when you go, now I understand what you meant by that. And we talked about
to this day. 2-time WWE champion. Even happened this past week. It happens every week. I notice something and go, man, okay, I won't do that again. Oh, that's clear now.
Drew, thank you again. And everybody out there, please tune in to Survivor Series this Sunday. It's going to be something you're never going to regret tuning into, absolutely, on the WWE Network. Thanks again, Drew, and take care, everyone.